Welcome to KWS Talks, the show where we take a deep dive into our school and explore the interesting people who are part of it.
We're here to bring you fresh perspectives, insightful conversations, and a touch of humour to brighten your day.
I'm Tristan, and I'm a co-host of KWS Talks. I'm excited to bring this week's episode to you.
And I'm Becky, the other co-host of KWS Talks. Together we're here to guide these important discussions.
Today we're honoured to welcome Miss Hobson, Deputy Head Teacher here at our school. Join us as we delve into her experiences and role here at KWS. Hello Mrs. Hobson. Teaching and supporting mental health is such an important role. Could you start by sharing what inspired you to work in this field?
Hello both. Essentially, mental health wasn't a prevalent issue in education for a long time. When I first started teaching, we didn't discuss mental health, we didn't normalise discussing it in schools. Although we had PSHE curriculums, there was never a focus on this. Mental health has become much more prevalent over the last 10 years and therefore has come to the forefront of supporting young people and their mental health. So as my career progressed, I fell into safeguarding and fell into leadership within safeguarding, and the mental health strand of that became a really prevalent area to focus on, which was something that really interested me. I have a psychology background that I really enjoy delving into and using, and my degree is in drama and film, which you may think is an interesting part to think about in the relation to mental health, is actually analysis of behaviour, of character, and how the mind and the brain works is a real interest to me. So I think I found this area really a really interesting place to start from. And then in my last school setting, we became one of the first schools to actually get the mental health kite mark, which is a recognition from county that we were doing lots to support children with mental health. And that became a real kind of achievement for me. And from then I got a bit of a reputation and started being used to speak in other schools and support other schools alongside EDI and safeguarding things. Mental health was one that they were tapping into me to use more. So I've then just it's become more part of my career and part of my research in my MA, and it's just integral to my teaching and my pedagogy in the schools.
How would you say your sort of school life has helped you? Because you said that you had a degree in sort of drama and that sort of side of the academics, and you said that was quite helpful. Could you explain a little bit more about that?
Yeah, when you study drama at degree level and film, there's a very close analysis on behaviour, people and character, where you actually sometimes quite annoyingly get to a point where you're scrutinising people's behaviours all the time, reading them, trying to interpret how they're feeling, and therefore you become quite astute to seeing children, in particular in my role, where their mental health may be in decline, or how they could you notice those little red flags and those changes more accurately, because I'm so in tune with noticing those differences in character and behaviour, and therefore able to then maybe support the idea of how to improve mental health and what potentially might need to happen to change how they're feeling in school. I think more importantly it's about normalising it, because it was such a taboo subject. Now I think sometimes the term is almost overused, and they're trying to find new ways to engage children in understanding how to support mental health, which I also think is a good thing, because children get bored very quickly, and if they hear taglines too often, they become obsolete. So I think that external agencies are really trying to shape up their game a little bit to try and engage people still, in young people in particular, in how to support their mental health. So.
Right. So I just never quite made that connection between drama and that sort of academic subject and then the mental health. I would more expect, like you said, psychology or some sort of neuroscience to be more of a popular choice. But I guess, as you said, it is still helpful in that sense.
Definitely. And as a strand off of psychology, because drama and psychology came quite hand in hand. I did psychology A-level but didn't pursue it further than A-level, and focused on the drama aspect of things and then teaching. But actually they both become quite integral when you think about how the brain works, how people respond to crisis situations, and those kind of scenarios are something that I was quite practiced to. When you also work in safeguarding, you become exposed to a lot of potential scenarios with children and adults, families, parents, etc. And these experiences then help you to build a bit of a repertoire as to how to support mental health. So that's kind of how I've applied it within my subject. And the empathy that you hold when you learn about drama as well. Yeah.
So I know you've kind of spoken about how your career has almost led to where you are now, and I understand there must be challenges at times, but What's the most rewarding part of your role here?
I think it's the idea that I'm helping families, because essentially when we help the child, we're generally helping a whole unit, a family unit, in a very difficult period where teens and adolescents can sometimes throw up some really difficult moments in family life, school life, personal lives, emotionally and educationally. And I think I feel like I have the opportunity to support somebody through the early stages of their life choices. I've been teaching for 21 years now, and I've tried to think about I was trying to tally up the other day how many children I've possibly influenced throughout my whole career. And, it goes into the thousands, and that is a nice thought to have, that potentially the children who've gone out into the big wide world and remembered that Mrs. Hobson was somebody that may have guided them a little bit or given them a bit of help, or
playing a small part in their journey.
Absolutely, definitely.
And you're speaking quite almost broadly about children and teenagers in general. Why would you say mental health is important for students, specifically people who are studying in school, to know and learn about?
I think being able to manage your mental health while you're learning about education, learning about retention of information, all of these sorts of things, stressful moments and resilience, I think is a really strong part of something that maybe a younger generation struggle with more, our COVID impacted generation struggle with more. So mental health for children, and them understanding how to support that, and actually giving them the skills to manage it themselves instead of relying on maybe other people all the time to support their mental health, to recognise the signs, where to seek help from. I think that's a really important aspect. The original drive that I got, a pilot that I was part of, was the Just Talk pilot, which has now been around for about 10 years, but they were originally launched to support boys and men's mental health, which was an area in particular that they felt wasn't spoken about enough, and that young boys and young men struggled to talk more freely about their emotions. So the original idea was about that, and reducing suicide tolls in men, and actually looking at suicide prevention. So that then grew into a much bigger project, that we realised actually all young people needed the support of being able to manage their well-being and their mental health. It's a lifelong skill that they're going to have to use when they leave education, when they leave school and go to the workplace, something that they really need as a positive attribute. I think it's a really strong employability aspect when somebody has an ability to recognise and work on their mental health positively.
Yeah, so it's definitely really important to learn about these things at school and learn about them correctly as well. I'm wondering, what's a common misconception that people, or students more specifically, have about mental health that you think would be amazing if you could kind of correct that?
I think there's a belief that mental health is let me rephrase that. I think there is a belief that poor mental health is a weakness. But it's actually understanding, and young people understanding, that they can't be on this highness of happiness for their whole life, and that there are pitfalls and there are struggles in life that they will have to deal with, that may affect how they're feeling emotionally. But actually, that they can pull through that. It's normal to have ups and downs in your mental health, and I think that's something they need to acknowledge, that having anxiety is a big part of your emotional health, but it's also a really positive part. If you didn't have anxiety, we're thinking about the Stone Ages, anxiety kicks in to save yourself from something, and that's something that's dangerous. So therefore they need to understand how to manage their anxiety, and I think it's important for young people to know that emotions are normal, and they're also normal for young people to have heightened emotions, and very high, big highs, and very low lows as well. But it's just to normalise it, and that when we use the term mental health, we're talking about the whole aspect of your mental well-being. And when we talk about poor or ill mental health, it's when that is at its lowest. But essentially, it's the same with physical health. You don't just say, how's your physical health, when you're talking about something negative. You're talking about whether you're feeling well or unwell. Right. And therefore the terminology is quite important as well. Mm-hmm. When you talk about mental health, you talk about poor mental health or ill mental health in comparison to, and making sure that children understand the difference about that.
So obviously, you're talking quite a lot about normalizing these sorts of topics and sort of, making it so that, it's not uncomfortable to talk about with friends, with family, with teachers. So how would you say schools equip students with the ability to, work through these emotions, work through these problems that they might have? And how do you think schools can better do so?
I think it's a really interesting question actually, because I think there are probably unknown support in so many subject areas across the school that people don't actually explicitly recognise. They focus on pastoral as being an area for mental health, but actually all subject areas have an opportunity to develop and support young people in their resilience and how they manage difficult situations and how they overcome problems, problem solving, etc. All subject areas have the ability to do that. But one key area that I think is really important is oracy, and children being able to verbalise and have the language skills to communicate how they're feeling effectively. Otherwise, it comes out what I call sideways. So it comes out with aggressive behaviour, anger, outbursts, violence, hitting, those type of things. Whereas actually, if they could verbalise more how they're feeling, be able to speak things through, it can ease their anxieties and their worries in a different way. But some children don't have those oracy skills, and I think schools are there to help provide them understand how they can use that to speak through how they're feeling instead of acting out on how they're feeling, where then there's often shame and regret afterwards because they didn't mean to necessarily harm, but they don't know how else to verbalise how they were feeling. And we see a lot of that happening in behaviours. You'll notice it with young children in lower schools or in earlier key stages. When they don't know how to verbalise or speak things through, they act things out or they try and get attention in a different way.
Yeah, so I mean, we're so lucky to be in a school where we have so much mental health support and it's spoken about quite openly. And obviously there's still things that can be done to improve that in every school. But if there was one thing that you could say to them, a tip that you wish every student knew.
Well, that's a hard question. There's so many aspects to it, but I think literally, I'm going to just use the tagline, just talk, because that is literally what I often say to children. I say, just speak to me. Sit down, even if it's writing the words down, if you can't say it out loud, whatever it is, just get down to me and explore how you can communicate your concern and how you're feeling, because offloading the thought process or the worry or the emotion and sharing that problem with an adult and a safe person in the school is going to halve their feelings of anxiety and worry. So yeah, I would just say just talk, and this is something that's why I've used that initiative, and it's something so simple. And we have now some Just Talk ambassadors in the school, some youth mental health ambassadors who are going to help signpost anybody who needs any kind of support to our Just Talk website or any other provisions or agencies that can help support mental health. But there's lots of help out there, not just necessarily in school. They're moving with the times and doing a lot of online support, so children don't have to necessarily have face-to-face talks with people, which I know they find maybe slightly uncomfortable. But yeah, just talk to somebody, talk to people.
Yeah, I think that's quite a key message that a lot of students need to hear. Speaking about, tips and what you wish every student should know, what would you give your teenage self if you could give them one piece of advice?
It doesn't matter what they think. I think that would probably be, if I could go back in time and tell my 15-year-old self, it really doesn't matter what they think. And that probably would have reduced a lot of concern, fear, worry about everything that I went through in childhood moving upwards into life, because teenagers, on a personal experience it's different, but teenagers in general care so much about what people think that it can hinder their development, their pathways, their ambition. I think that's what I would tell myself.
Yeah, I know sometimes people might feel pressured to feel or act a certain way, but there is support out there, and especially with your peers. So how can students look out for their friends who might be struggling if they've noticed some signs that they think, maybe they need a bit of extra support?
Yeah, there's lots of ways peers can support. The power of human connection is really important, and being able to recognise and seeing when somebody is struggling is a real sign of a true friendship and somebody who genuinely has your best interests. And if you are feeling low, or if you're upset or concerned about something, I would hope that your friends would notice this change in character and potentially, touch base with you first and say, is everything okay? I've noticed you look sad, or you look different today, or you're acting differently, and offer that support. We're doing some assemblies in the Mental Health Awareness Week where we're going to introduce the Just Talk ambassadors, who are going to be some of our signposters. And it would be really useful if you see a friend who's down or sad, that you say, why don't you go and touch base with one of the ambassadors, because they could give you some guidance as to where you could go for some more support, or maybe take you to somebody in pastoral that they know would be really helpful. So using that as a norm in the school, that there's that kind of allyship where a friend would look out for you and be able to notice if you were low for any reason.
Yeah, but I also think it's quite important to know that it's not solely up to you to be, responsible for someone. So if someone is, feeling down, or you can tell that something is up, there is no shame in going to a teacher or to a trusted adult and explaining the situation and having more help from them.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And especially like during these trying times for example, the year 11s who are currently studying for or doing their GCSEs.
Yeah.
What sort of advice would you give to them in terms of, how to stay, how to keep a healthy mental health during these exams?
Yeah, so exam stress is quite a difficult period, and I think that, again, in hindsight, as an older person who's taken a series of exams in their past, they are important. They are a way to determine where your next steps are going to go, regardless of what they are. But I am also very much like, what will be, and if you work your hardest and try your hardest in any situation, what is the outcome will be the outcome, and you will work with the best of those opportunities when they arrive. So if you felt like you've tried your hardest and you get the grade that you get at the end of the day, work your best with whatever you're offered and try your hardest. Like, I didn't do amazingly well in my GCSEs. I didn't go to a very good school, as in a London school, which had a lot of difficulties. But I tried to refocus myself to get some GCSEs so I could move onwards, because I had a goal and I had an ambition that I wanted to teach. So I knew I had to have certain grades under my belt. So essentially, I tried my hardest, and whatever I came out with, I then worked harder upon to get to what goal I wanted to get to. And it's never too late. So there's always opportunity to change things up. If you feel like you haven't revised or prepared well enough for a particular exam, instead of procrastinating, instead of just throwing the towel in and saying, that's it, I'm not doing it, you still have, hours, days before your exam to really try and improve on your concerns. So it's never too late, and just keep going and try and enjoy the process. Tick the boxes every time one's done, and think about that long summer that you're going to have, the longest probably of your life. So.
The long summer is definitely something to look forward to. And speaking as a person who recently completed the GCSEs as well as Becky, I think another important thing to know is to not compare yourself to other people, and not to sort of, based on what you've done or what grades you're getting, comparing yourself to other people won't serve you in any way. And I think it's important to realize it's your own path that you're doing. And I mean, I'm sure Becky will have also some advice that, helped her during her time. But I think that's something I especially kept in mind, is that, no matter what anyone else is doing, as long as you're doing the best you can, then that's all anyone can ask.
Someone shared a really good analogy with me about a race, and saying, you stay in your lane, you focus on your lane, because no one's running the same race as you. So your race, your life, is different from the next person. So the pace that you get to your finish line is what you will do. You don't need to compare yourself to other people in this race or everyone else's journey. Everyone may have a different end goal, aspirations, directions they're going to go in. Just focus on your own achievements, and make sure you do your best for yourself.
Yeah. But Becky, would you say you have any advice that sort of kept you going through these stressful times?
Through GCSEs, I remember I kept in mind, always be kind to yourself, because although you want to work really hard and do as best as you can, and of course that's a brilliant goal to have, you also want to kind of keep that positive relationship with yourself. So look after yourself, be kind to yourself, and there's some points that you just can't study anymore. Sometimes you just have to call it a night, and just take the kindest option.
Yeah. Eat well, sleep well.
Definitely.
Well, thank you, Miss, for sort of answering these questions. I know some of these things might be difficult to talk about, but it's good that we sort of normalize it and, get more people speaking about it openly. Now, moving on to a more sort of fun activities that you would like to do or that you normally do in terms of, winding down perhaps after a long day of work or even a long day of school for some students. What would you say is your go-to way to relax after a busy day?
Oh, I love a crime film or documentary, live documentaries, Netflix. I can binge watch those, but I have to put it in amongst my studying, amongst my marking and schoolwork. But it's something I like to have in the background. It helps me decompress. But I also love spending time with my family and eating. That's a great pastime for me.
Do you have a favourite book or podcast specifically about mental health, or if not?
Yeah, there is a book. It's maybe not particularly about mental health, but it does touch upon it. It's about inherited trauma, which can be part of mental health, and it's called It Didn't Start With You. And I found it the most interesting book about generational inherited trauma. So it goes way back to potentially eras where there were generations of people who were affected by war or genocide or whatever, and how that has now impacted the current generation of that same culture. It's really interesting, clever book.
If you could have any superpower to help students, what would it be?
Confidence. I think if a child has confidence, it can, in themselves, it can eliminate so many other areas of concern and risk. And I remember a parent saying, what can I do to protect my child from online things, all the things that are going on online, or being vulnerable to exploitation and all those things. And I said, if your child has the confidence in themselves, they will say no, they will know they're better, and they will understand who is and where there is danger or somebody doing them wrong. But if they don't have that confidence in themselves, they will seek it out in different places, different ways, which usually end up in something that's maybe risky, dangerous, etc. So a confidence in a child. If I had a magic superpower, I would ping everyone with some confidence.
I think that's quite a good message to sort of end on, is to even if you might not have the confidence now, is to sort of work on it and have confidence in yourself that you are doing the right thing, and that you will have the confidence to be who you are, and then the mental health will then follow and improve slowly.
Yeah.
Well, thank you, Miss, for coming on today's episode. It's definitely been quite interesting to hear from a teacher's perspective, but as well as a perspective of a person who's been through a lot in their life and how that is accumulated now. Becky, any last words?
No, just thank you so much for coming on here. I think it will be really valuable for both students and parents and even teachers to listen to this. And we're really grateful that you could give up your time for this. Thank you so much.
You're more than welcome. It's been really nice to speak to you both.
Thank you, Miss.
Thank you.
That's all for today's episode of KWS Talks. We hope you found this conversation as valuable as we did.
A huge thank you to Mrs. Hobson for sharing your time with us. Your work makes such a difference in our school.
If today's chat resonated with you, share it with a friend who might need to hear it.
And don't forget to tune in next time for another meaningful conversation.
Take care of yourselves and each other. See you next time.